Consolidated Diamond. It's a state company in Adom-Otchere. It was divested some years ago, and the one who won the tender after the divestiture was required to pay for the if you like the concession. Was required to pay for it. He was required to pay some 18 million United States dollars. Thankfully, the one who won is Ghanaian. I won't mention names. He has a Ghanaian company. He was required to pay 18 million United States dollars. That company has till date paid 4 million United States dollars. And guess what? The company is being taken away from this local company. We suspect it's to be given to a foreign company to run the concession because the company has not finished paying. And so a letter was written to the company that reminding them of their obligations to finish paying, and that if they were not to pay by a certain date, the government was going to take over under an interim management committee and abrogate the entire contract. So this company went to court and said that I am under peril. So they went to look for the prerogative writ of injunction. And the notice of injunction was given to the DIC. However, last night, there was absolute and total drama. Before I tell you the drama of last night, let's have a look at some of these letters. This is first the letter that was written to the company. We'll have a look at it on the screen in a minute. This is what we talk about. So this letter is written from Cardinal Law Group. You can read some of it, but we don't have time to go through all. So this letter is informing the company that, well, if you do not complete your obligation of what will be left as 13 million United States dollars to pay to the government of Ghana, the original owners of the mine, then we will take it from you. So this is the letter that was written to the people, informing them that there was a problem. So that's a fair letter. They wrote to them. Okay, let's see the other letter. So the people also responded. This is the conclusion of the first one. Let's responded. The people also responded by their lawyers because they became worried because there's been a political change. So sometimes when there's a political change in Ghana, there are issues. So they became quite worried. And then they also wrote by this letter. Now they wrote and said that you can see that the title, The Great Consolidated Diamond Company. They wrote this letter and said that, well, since we received your letter, we have gone to court because we believe that we are being unfairly treated. You, the government, know why we have not been able to pay. We have not been able to pay because there's significant debt owed to us by the government of Ghana. This is a private Ghanaian company who pays 4 million out of 18 million for a product, a government concession. The government concession says that you haven't paid the rest, so we are taking you out. This happened under the NDC, and the taking you out is happening now. But this is a Ghanaian company. And they write and say that, well, there are problems that you are aware of. You know why we have not paid. We have not paid because government owes us significant amount of money, and government has not paid us for the work that we have done. We are a business. We are a multiple business. So government owes us money, and government has not paid. For that reason, we have not been able to discharge that obligation. If you, the government, were to pay us back, we will now be able to discharge that obligation. And guess what? Last night, the minister responsible, is it a minister? Is it the government official in charge, sent armed men to the Ghanaian company's office in Roman Ridge to collect the managing director himself, to collect his laptop, and to collect his car, and collected everything. Ransacked the office like a Rambo-style military government after 25 years of the Fourth Republic. After 25 years of the Fourth Republic. This is what happened last night in Ghana. We will deal with it extensively on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we'll give you a full gamut of what happened. Because when it's a Ghanaian company, we will come out. We will come out for a Ghanaian company anytime. That's our pet subject on this program. For as long as we run, we have to ensure that the demonization of Ghanaian companies ends so that we can have people to produce. So this company, last night, Rambo style, they were sitting down, military, police, everybody went there, grabbed their laptops. I'll show you some of the evidence of that. Grabbed their laptops and grabbed the managing director and threw him away and then just took his car away and said, leave here. When the matter is pending in court, in a constitutional democracy, there's executive, there's judiciary, there's legislature. In the area of judiciary, the court has the final say. A matter is pending in court over a company like that, and they send people there in Rambo style to go and collect their stuff. The company has made complaints to national security. They are still looking at it. You know, nice gentlemen from the national security, I have to say, they are still looking at it. But by Tuesday, they will come and give you a full account. This should never happen. You know why it should not happen? I'm ending now. A British company took your $1 million. You have not used national security to go after them. A British company. Auditor General said so, and we've said that on this program. The other day, some people called me from Corruption Watch. I've forgotten their name. That they want to follow up that story. I was delighted to hear that. Corruption Watch people are multimedia. They wanted to follow that story. Crawl. The British company has been paid $1 million of taxpayers' money. You are not chasing him. A Ghanaian has put up $4 million of his own money, left with $30 million to pay, and you are chasing him and soldiers to take his laptop and take his car from him that he should go home without a car. Why? Why do we do this to ourselves? 25 years after the Fourth Republic. We are now in 26 years after launching the Fourth Republic, a democratic state. Ghana is praised all over the world as a democratic state. A matter is in court and state officials send people to go and grab. You send the military on our own people. You don't send the military on the British company that has taken a $1 million from us. You don't say anything about that. We have the whole DNI. Nobody goes and says, let's a high commission go to the British company and say, pay back our money. Because the Auditor General said they should pay back our money. Those were his instructions. He ordered that pay back our money. If you are just joining me, I'm talking about a story once again of putting a Ghanaian company under peril by Ghanaian state officials, using the coercive authority of Ghana to put a Ghanaian local company in peril and leave a British company that has taken $1 million from us. The Auditor General says the British company took $1 million for no work done. Nobody is chasing it. No military, no police. Nobody is chasing it. A Ghanaian company has paid $4 million. A Ghanaian company is able to make $4 million of his own money to pay a percentage of a mine that he wants, that he won the tender. He has $30 million more to pay. You write to him and say your time is due. That's fair. After you write to him, he says, I have to go to court because you know why I have not paid. He goes to court. Matter is pending in court. You send policemen to throw him out of the company forcibly. An indigenous company. This will never happen in America. No American state official will treat an American company like that. A company that employs Ghanaians. We'll talk about it more on Tuesday. We are not done. We'll talk about it more on Tuesday. Now, though, without much ado, I have to thank the office of Mr. Gabby Otchere Darko for agreeing that they give us that interview. And so we will now go straight to the interview that you have been waiting for and stuff. But don't forget my monologue. I'll come back to it. We'll now go straight to the interview. Here is it. So, since 29th August 2013, you left the country in despair. Now, 29th August is the date on which the Supreme Court delivered a verdict that said that actually John Dramani Mahama had won the election of 2012 legitimately. And you were part of that legal team that lost that. And you left the country. Why did you leave? To do what? Had you given up on the ambition?
My ambition?
The ambition of Nana Addo Akufo-Addo to be president.
Well, I think if you look at it that way, I think I left the president, also left the country. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So why did you leave?
Well, I left to set up a consultancy in London. So I think primarily that's why I left. But I don't think the intention was to leave for good, because my family was still here, and I was coming back every 4 to 6 weeks.
On the night when was declared winner of the election,
yeah,
what role did you anticipate for yourself? You as Gabby Otchere Darko, coming from 2001, with this kind of relationship with the president and the penetration in the Ghanaian society, business, politics. What role did you anticipate for yourself when you stood at the Independence Square and saw Nana Addo take the oath of office? What role did you anticipate for yourself?
The role that I'm in now.
What's that role? What is it called?
I'm a senior partner of a law firm, a corporate law firm. That's the role.
You remember of your law firm?
Yes. I've never seen myself as a politician. I see myself as a political strategist because I don't think I can convince anyone to vote for me. But I think, even as a student, I think I can help make a candidate. You know, so I don't see myself as a politician, and also because I have this sort of Kanawu attitude. You know, sometimes I say it as
Kanawu. That's not political. It's not politically correct.
I'm saying that I don't consider myself. I've never considered myself as a politician, although I come from a very political family, but I see myself as a strategist. You know, whether it's in communications, whatever it is.
I get that, but let me take you back. I mean, if you were to run for Otchere seat, if you were to run for Otchere seat, you will win. So when you say you don't see yourself as a politician, that you can't convince somebody to vote for, if you run on Eboka North, you will win.
South.
Eboka South, as the MPP candidate, you will win.
I'm not interested.
Okay, so
I've
you're not
never been
interested in the elective
and if you look
politics.
at it, regardless of the role I've played in politics all these years, I've never held a political office. You know, because I don't think my relevance in politics is measured by my title. I think it's measured by my contribution, especially to those who matter. You know, and I see myself as I see my contribution more in terms of what I can contribute, ideas, strategy, and that kind of thing, and even identifying, you know, talent in politics. So that's been my role.
So that coming into Akufo-Addo's presidency, those who knew you and you knowing yourself, you were clear in your mind that you will not become Honorable Gabby Otchere Darko, Minister for Foreign Affairs.
I made a public statement in 2012 that after this election, I'm done, because I think that I believed in the Akufo-Addo project, okay? And I was prepared to even, if you like, downplay my own career to help that project succeed. Because and I'm sure you can bear testimony to what I'm saying. If you have the opportunity to spend time with the man, you listen to him, the commitment, the passion, the sincerity, and the ideas, the energy, and the patriotism that runs through his veins and all that. When you combine all that, you inspire to work for his project.
But he must be a very powerful backbencher then, given your connections and relationship with the party in power, with the president in power, with the finance minister, whom we'll be talking about. You must be a very powerful backbencher.
Backbencher is usually part of the team.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So are you an influential backbencher?
But am I even a backbencher? Well, I'm saying in Parliament, you have MPs who are backbenchers.
Okay, let me change the person. Yeah. You're a very powerful and influential background.
I think whatever value I bring to board, whether in my practice, and I believe at home, which my wife obviously will bear with me, I think it maybe stems from my intellectual contribution to whatever it is. Yeah.
To all of those people.
I think so.
First major thing that hit a lot of people was his announcement of the ministers, the size of his government, 120 odd ministers, the biggest perhaps in the history of the country, but certainly the biggest in the history of the Fourth Republic. How did you receive that? It came as a shock to everyone.
Not to me.
You were not surprised?
No.
He told you he was going to do 120 ministers?
No. He didn't. You know, Akufo-Addo has a pragmatic appreciation of what he wants to do. And I remember, I think way back, maybe 2008, I used to help him with his speeches, and we were working on his speech. And I think I put in the phrase, lean and mean government. And he said, take it out. So we started, and you know, he likes debate.
Yeah.
So we started having a debate on that. He's a bully, though, like every barrister. If you see the intellectual bully, I must say. So we were having a debate, and I said, but it goes with our philosophy, lean, mean government. He goes, you can say that in UK, but I have been an attorney general. BA, we had 2 lawyers.
BA means what?
Brunhafo. Yeah. Doing prosecution, go to Water region. And you are telling me about a lean government? In most cases, the strategic places that we need personnel, we don't have. So I don't buy into this lean government. I buy into the personnel that are required to undertake a project. And I hope that Ghanaians will actually see the articulation of his vision. If you look at it, for instance, he wants to focus on railway, okay? So he sets up a ministry that is focusing on railway, and we are seeing results.
Are we really?
We are seeing results.
In railway?
We are seeing results.
Have you sat in a train?
Yeah.
Have you sat in a train yet? Do you know people who have sat in a train?
Yes, I know people who have.
From Accra to Kumasi?
But if you say Accra to Kumasi. But what we are seeing now, we are seeing a significant expansion, okay, of the railway sector. We've never seen that in Ghana. I mean, the railway sector has not even grown since colonial days, okay? So, but clearly the plans in place and what they are doing, we are going to see that, and we need that as a country. So he believes that he needs a minister for that, So, and I think that what people should do at the end of 2020 is take the sheet and a pen and look at the performance of all the various ministries. That's if he doesn't make any changes between now and then, and then see whether indeed there was a sense in creating that ministry, and whether the ministry has delivered. I find it a bit too...
It's not just about adding ministries that the concern was. Yes, he added some ministries, but the extent of ministers and deputy ministers, 120. So yes, railway is appreciated. Yes. And it's appreciable.
Yes.
And then there was Ministry for Ports, and that's...
Transport. Yes.
Transport was divided. That's all appreciated. You can do all that and still have a lean government in terms of the personnel.
Yeah.
But here's 120.
But and one thing, I don't like saying this, but you also have to see the kind of public sector we have. And sometimes in order to drive a project, you need a political leadership on top of that project.
Do you need numbers in the political leadership?
No, but how many numbers?
120.
But I'm saying that, but you are looking at 120. If it translates into having for the first time a railway network in the country, if it translates in having for the first time, what are some of the ministries that you can mention? At the moment, we have 16 regions. That has been created. Now they have to empower those regions with the necessary personnel and resources. If that translates into making sure that development can go closer to the people in those regions, then you will see the results. So he mentioned, for instance, that rather than having the infrastructure budget all sitting at the center and being dispersed from the center, he wants to make sure every constituency has $1 million to decide what to do with it. Now, what you're seeing with that is that you are making sure that your infrastructural spend is felt in every constituency in the country. Now, if that requires building like a development authority, he's done so. So my point is that for every personnel office created, it is part of his bigger vision. And I think we should look at it from that point of view. And we still have time. Say October 2020. Take out your pen and your paper and then begin marking him. But I think that it is not as if he did that because he wanted to give job to the boys or girls, if you like. He did that because he felt that he needed to do so to have the political leadership that was required or is required to implement his vision and his programs.
Do you also share the view that perhaps it's time for Akufo-Addo to do a reshuffle?
I think the reshuffle is not, there's only one man who will decide when he feels he needs to have a reshuffle. And I'll leave that to him. But you know, in the American system, for instance, once you're appointed Secretary of State, you are there on, as we are seeing now. You decide to resign, or the president decides to fire you when you're about to resign. You know, so you can look at that, and then you can look at also the UK system, where they can decide to have a reshuffle because the prime minister has changed, or for some reason. But in our circumstances, well, we have what?
Akufo had 2 reshuffles in the first 4 years.
Yes, but
2 major ones.
But I think really, it's when the president is convinced he wants to have a reshuffle, he will have it. That's if he is convinced.
I mean, you're an analyst, strategist. Does it seem to you that for the effectiveness and efficiency of a government now, we need a reshuffle? For instance, the MPP campaigned on corruption and said that the NDC had been corrupt. There's wild, loud noises from MPP people that there's been no single prosecution of any NDC person, even though the MPP told the Ghanaian people that there's been a lot of corruption in the NDC. I mean, the kind of corruption bells that were sung by the MPP campaign, it was indicative that the entire NDC cabinet and its leader were very corrupt. The Office of the Attorney General has not been able to do that. Would you say that effectiveness and efficiency comes up in that regard, and they may need a change over there, and then some other ministries that we can talk about?
I think I can understand some of the frustrations about lack of plenty prosecutions, if you like. I can understand the frustration out there. But I think also,
if you look at if you look at the comparison with Akufo-Addo, and you know, Akufo-Addo's government can be easily compared with Kufuor's government because they both inherited from NDC, and they both inherited something they described as bad. Akufo-Addo, in 2.5 years as Attorney General, had done the National Reconciliation Commission, he had done the quality grain prosecution, he had fended off Martin Amidu's concerns about Kufuor using Jacob Echebelamte and others. He had done recovered contracts and all that. In 2.5 years, Akufo-Addo's Attorney General's office had done all that. And now, there's not... Quality grain was high-profile prosecution. There's been nothing.
I think there's prosecutions happening, and I understand that the value of the case is over 750 million Ghana cedis. Now, that's huge by any sort of imagination. I'm sure if you put all the prosecuted cases over the last 20 years, you may not even have that, half of that.
Are you referring to the Cocoa Board and the NCA?
Yes, and the rest of it. It's about 750 million. And I'm sure, of course, we are all lawyers, we hear what's going on. I'm sure there are others coming. I mean, I think the capital venture thing, venture capital is on. I understand there are others that are coming. But I think, to me, there's also one area we have to focus on. And I think the Attorney General's job is not just to prosecute. It's about making sure that contracts are done properly. And when you do so, then you may not even have to be sort of, if you like, screaming for prosecutions, because the right things have been done. And I see the strength of this, the Attorney General, Mr. Kufu, Gloria Kufu, as a lot more in making sure that the right things are done. You know,
by way of civil contracts.
Absolutely, and she's been excellent in
well, I mean, they've done something there. They rescued the Alfred Woyome matter.
Precisely. I mean, you know, so it's not as if nothing has been done. I think a lot has been done. And you also have to, and I think that's where we should take our minds to, which cases are necessarily justifiable. Because, for instance, one government or one institution may decide to buy something for 10 cedis. another may decide to buy it for 12 cities or 8 cities. Will that necessarily call for prosecution? So I think really, to me, first and foremost, the most important thing is how we ensure integrity in the use of public funds, how we ensure that the doctrine of value for money is forever adhered to. I think those are, once you focus in those areas and make sure that there's the sanctity of contracts. I mean,
well, in that regard, the Public Procurement Authority has been doing its work, hasn't it?
What happened last week? The press release from the Bank of Ghana about this Septon thing. There was a procurement process. The company that won, was 30 times, the price was 30 times more than the next one, the second most expensive one, 30 times more. And even the Public Procurement Authority advised that in terms of liability of the Bank of Ghana, in terms of if the contract for something happens and there's a breach of contract or whatever, should not be more than 300,000. As if maybe this contract may not survive a new government. They went to insert $475 million liability.
For the Bank of Ghana?
Yes. And that's why they're in the London court.
The arbitration?
Yes. That's why they're in arbitration now, because of that. So those are the things that, and for such a case, we hope.
But there's no prosecution going on in that regard.
But I suspect and I expect prosecutions, because in this case, it has been seen that money was unfairly, or bribe money, according to the Bank of Ghana, was given to an employee. And then the Bank of Ghana statement also speaks of what? Pressure being brought upon them. And then the management, the leadership of the Bank of Ghana knew what was going on and allowed it. And I think this calls for a wider investigation beyond the Gilbert Addy chap who's been fired and who received or had an arrangement to receive $500,000 as bribe money for securing that contract. I mean, something that this government has been able to do for around $4 million. We're going to pay what? In excess of 6 billion Ghana cedis for it. So I think really, and like I said, fortunately, they've been able to, it's also the strength of the investigation, they've been able to now find criminality. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, people would find ways of beating the system. You mentioned PPA.
Yes.
He's been asked to step aside.
Yes.
The NYA, mm-hmm. He's been asked to go home.
Yes.
So it all depends on the gravity of the evidence, even before you get into it. On the face of it, you can tell that this one, even though I have to wait for the results of the investigation to determine whether there's a criminal case, on the face of it, I don't think I can work with you. And I think you are seeing that. So you can't.
Should we be seeing more of that?
If there's a need for it. And I believe that whenever there's a need for it, you see such actions.
We hear that there are 21 prosecutions to happen sometime soon. What prevents the government that has so loudly pointed corruption fingers at the NDC to say that 21 persons are Mr. A, B, C, D of the NDC? Why can't you say that?
I think we just have to also be careful about political witch hunt, or the perception of political witch hunt. And it's because, look, like I said, even for the Attorney General, it is not just about corruption, because the Attorney General's office is not where the investigation is done. It has to be done elsewhere for the docket to be brought to the Attorney General, for her to then prosecute. And I think really there's clearly a need to strengthen the tools for investigation, and before you may even get to prosecution. I mean, look at what happened with the Septon case. Mm-hmm. It took the arbitration lawyer from the UK, their investigation, to unearth the sham of a company that was used to pay the staff of the Bank of Ghana. Then you ask what was our investigators doing. So really, I think there's also the need to strengthen the apparatus of undertaking investigations in these cases. Yeah.
If Akufo-Addo presents himself, there's going to be the same candidates for 2012, were the same candidates for 2016, and will be the same candidates again for 2020. I'm not sure that we have had that record in Ghana in past history. I mean, we can think of Mills and Kufuor.
Certainly not.
Certainly not. So this is
not three
three rounds of same two individuals, because President Mahama is a campaign again, is a presidential candidate again. How did you react to President Mahama's victory, landslide victory, to be the NDC candidate?
Well, I found it, well, first of all, it was predictable.
Was predictable to you?
Yes, it was very predictable, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. But I thought the NDC found itself in a very difficult situation. Mm-hmm. Because one, this is the candidate who registered the biggest defeat in Ghana's...
Since Fourth Republic?
Not since, in Ghana's history.
Oh, okay.
As an incumbent.
As an incumbent, yes.
In Ghana's history. But he's the most marketed. Mm-hmm. Okay? Unfortunately, and I'm saying so because it has been the history that for a candidate to win from opposition, you have to go at least more than once.
Yeah.
We've seen that. So you have to be marketed. So he's the most marketed. So, but at the same time, what will be his message? You know, the difficulty, because he can also do one term. So in assuming he even wins, you still have to bring another candidate.
You mean he's eligible for one term only, one
Precisely.
more term?
Yeah, yeah. You know, but then the difficulty is that, okay, you know, maybe he has the wherewithal, and I'm sure we don't have to go into details on that. I'm sure you understand exactly what I mean.
You're suggesting he has money? I don't know.
I'm suggesting that he has the wherewithal.
Okay.
And he's been marketed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what will his message in 2020 be? And I ask this question for a very poignant reason, and I'll tell you why I think it is. One, he was really the most blessed president ever in this country's history. If you, even in Nkrumah, had the issue of having to build a new system, country, and the rest of it. Okay? By the time he took over, we'd even just a year or so in being an oil producer. Mm-hmm. Cocoa prices were good. You know, Ghana had really not much of a debt.
But he also suffered very low oil prices, the lowest in a long time, very long history. It came out to $45 per barrel.
It's not the lowest.
For the last 10, 15 years, it was.
It's not the lowest. If you look at even the period before, you know, we had $15 per barrel, even under Rawlings. Mm-hmm. Okay, $16 per barrel, but somehow he managed to.
But he was coming from a drop of $130 per barrel all the way to 45.
If you say a drop, it means it was an instant drop.
Well, no,
then at the same time, you could say
gradually.
that Kufuor also went from $45 to $128. Mm-hmm. You know, you could make that argument.
Okay.
But when you're an oil producer, which Kufuor didn't have, it means when the oil prices go up, you benefit revenue.
Yeah.
When it goes down,
you suffer.
But you benefit in terms of the ex-pump price.
Well, okay.
You know what I mean? So it is not. You can win and lose, but you don't lose or win. You can win and lose, whichever way, depending on the production that you have in terms of your level of production. So this was the situation that we had. But what did he do? What did he do? He wasted the opportunity. Okay? And
wasted is harsh.
Wasted. And I say wasted because imagine that just the last couple of years, this government had to pay arrears, GES, Ghana Education Service arrears, going back 2010. okay? Even for the North, scholarships for secondary school education had not been paid from 2014. This government had to pay that. These are all the arrears I'm talking about. Arrears in the energy sector, arrears in the road sector, 2 billion arrears in the road sector. You know, so what did they actually use the money for? And they borrowed more than any other government in the history of this country. And when you look at it, even now, in terms of our external borrowing, it's gone down. In fact, the rate of borrowing has gone down by, or debt rising has gone down by 71%, as opposed to the growth before 2017. You know, so when you look at all the opportunities that he had, okay, and took Ghana to the IMF, ran to the IMF, because by 2014, we were supposed to be going to the IMF. Eventually, the decision was taken in 2015. And if we didn't go to the IMF, what would have happened to the economy? Because people had lost confidence in the economy. And you can tell by the fact that by 2017, having a new government in, FDI rose from 2.4 billion to 4.4 billion.
Okay, so you are saying Mahama doesn't have a message?
My question is,
or what is Mahama offering? That's the point.
I'm asking, what will his message be? Because it seems to me, because by I'm telling you, the whole budget.
His message will be to run a direct comparison of his 4 years and Akufo-Addo's 4 years.
But
he's going to do that.
He should bring it on.
He will.
He should bring it on. Yeah. He should bring it on, because the key thing is that you had the opportunity, and what you did was to just pile up debt for the next government to come and then clear your mess. I hear now it's all about clearance. Who is a, you know,
one was a famous clearing agent in Tema. It's called Mr. Lomote.
Apparently, John Mahama was the freight forwarder, and he forwarded all the freight of the mess for Akufo-Addo to clear as an agent. You know, so that's the situation that you're in. So what is he going to say differently? You know, and when you look at it. And fortunately, I still have affinity with researchers, including my friend Edward Asumani, and they do a lot of research. What you notice is that every government sort of dips a bit, okay? And
from election up to the next election.
And I would say that the last few months have been, you would say perhaps maybe 2019 has been this government's annus horribilis, as it were. You know, but when if you look at all the research, it tells you that the main opposition candidate is not rising. You know, so
he's still at 44%.
I don't even want to put percent, but clearly it appears that there's something about his record which I'm not too sure. So I really wonder what his message.
So you mean if the NDC had a different candidate, the MPP would have been under more pressure for 2020?
I think so. Because it is not as if the MPP is going to compare its record to an NDC record. They are comparing Akufo-Addo's record to the person who just lost office. And I think that's the difficulty that the NDC itself recognizes it has.
Why do you think they will not win in that comparison? They will not win aspects of that comparison.
But the facts are there. Really, the facts are there. I mean, let me just show you one thing that perhaps we are not taking full cognizance of. By September this year, you would have had 500,000 young Ghanaians, okay, without secondary education, who would have otherwise been, who are now in classrooms.
500,000?
Yes.
Because of free SHS, they are now in classrooms.
Yes, they wouldn't have been. Okay. Now, imagine what would have happened 5 years from now. A big chunk of them would have had children.
Yes, new children.
They don't have secondary education. What would have been the future of their children? We need to think about these things. What would have been the future of the 500,000 who by now would not have been in classrooms or would not have had secondary education? Who would have gone ahead and with a big, many of them would have had children? What would have been the future of their children? Forget about even them, but the future of their children. It's the same thing. A lot of cocoa farmers, okay, did not, maybe after junior secondary school, did not continue, okay? So they invested 10 years. I'm talking about, let's go back maybe 2000, 2004. Those who decided that or couldn't go to secondary school but became cocoa farmers. 2014, what happened? The swollen shoot disease hit. What was this government, the John Mahama government's response?
To cut the trees.
To ask them to cut the trees, to plant new trees. And after 10 years of investment, that's when what? They become really full and you are benefiting. And government just left them. Go to Western North. I understand about 60% of cocoa there were destroyed. But they were left on their own. Government was just prepared to give you maybe what? The seedlings or whatever to go and do what you have to do. But it has changed. What is happening now is that government has taken on the responsibility of doing the replanting, cutting the trees, doing the replanting, and even nurturing it for a while. So my point is the same thing that you are seeing in secondary school education.
You're seeing it in cocoa production.
It is not as if, I'm just saying, but because 10 years, those who didn't go to secondary school, who even became cocoa farmers and have been hit by the swollen shoot disease, they have to go back another 10 years without any support from government. So I think that, look, I mean, it's easy to sit on social media and do what we're all good at, which is to bash. Because, if you are a social media junkie, you always have to have something to say. And the easiest thing is to bash government. And that's why some of us say that, yes, do the bashing because it's important. Even if this government is doing well, it can do better because the situation that we're in as a country. So please, help it, put pressure on it to do better. But always remember that the alternative is still scary.
The alternative is scary.
Still, it was scary.
It was scary and it's still scary.
It's still scary.
On a bit of energy, you know PDS, don't you? PDS,
Yeah.
Power Distribution Services.
I pay them money.
Oh, you pay them money?
Yes, every week.
Because you mean by your electricity? Okay. So this speech that you gave, Ghana Beyond Aid, the role of the state-owned enterprises, joint venture companies, and other state enterprises. In the third paragraph here, you talk about the Electricity Company of Ghana, a multi-billion-dollar assets that generates income every second you and I turn on our lights, need the balance sheet of another SOE, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC, to guarantee the purchase of fuel for the car power ship to generate electricity, which generates income. You're asking a question. ECG is a good example of how not to run an SOE, how not to run an SOE. And then you say the current problems with the PDS concession have brought into active play a Ghanaian pastime, which is doing intelligent ex post facto analysis. Let me, and you're asking the audience, to permit you to use the platform to have your say in trying to sound intelligent after the facts. And you ask, why were we afraid to privatize ECG instead of offering a concession, whether for 25 years or 20 years? What's the point that you are really making? You don't like the MIDA? You don't like the Compact 2?
I think if you had read further, I went ahead to explain.
Okay, so the interview is still on, and the segment that you're about to hear is when I ask him questions about energy and PDS. And as I said, later on, we talked about other segments. From there, we talked about banking crisis. And I also asked him questions about his law firm. And for the first time I heard, and he explained to me that his law firm doesn't do government business. He told me in the interview, and I asked him that, so what does your law firm do? And he told me that his law firm doesn't do government business at all. They don't do business with any government. You will hear that. And then I asked him about family and friends. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue from exactly where we left off. We'll do that right away.
In this part of the world, we are up long before the sun. Our part to make our world, our connections and relationships a lot more brighter. They say agrobeswa ne frianopa. Start your day bright with MTN Kokroko. For only 1 Ghana cedi, you can enjoy 400 megabytes of data and 30 minutes of free MTN to MTN calls every day from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. everywhere you go. Dial *138# to buy the MTN Kokroko bundle now. We day for you. everywhere you go.
Hey, mommy. Why? So you are the one who's been disposing of urine and human excreta into the dustbins? Oh. Please, the dustbins are meant for litter and garbage, not for dumping of human excreta or urine. It's not a healthy habit, crap. Stop it, please. Oh yeah, take it to the public toilet or something. The use of bins as dumping sites for excreta or urine is highly inappropriate. Aside the stench, we risk the outbreak of communicable diseases like cholera or typhoid. Keep the environment clean and healthy. Do not dump urine or excreta into bins.
So it's 10 o'clock and you're watching our interview recorded earlier with Gabby Otchere Darko. If you're just joining us, you've missed quite a bit. What is left for you to see, though, is our questions to him about the energy sector and about PDS, where he has been accused of all sorts of things, but he spoke about it. We asked him those questions. And then also about the banking crisis. And then we asked him, what work does he do? What does his law firm do? So he told us what his law firm does. And he told us also that his law firm doesn't do any government business. You see that as well. And we talked to him about the banking crisis and confronted him with some of the things Prince Kofi Amoabi has been saying, and he answered them. Finally, we talked about the family and friends allegation against him and members of President Akufo-Addo's family who happen to either be in government or be related to government. So the interview with Gabby Otchere Darko continues right now. Here it is.
You say the current problems with the PDS concession have brought into active play a Ghanaian pastime, which is doing intelligent ex post facto analysis. Let me, and you're asking the audience to permit you to use the platform to have your say in trying to sound intelligent after the facts. And you ask, why were we afraid to privatize ECG instead of offering a concession, whether for 25 years or 20 years? What's the point that you are really making? You don't like the MIDA? You don't like the Compact 2?
I think if you had read further, I went ahead to explain it. I think my whole point was, it is as if there's, I mean, if you ask me, you offer a concession and you leave ECG to do what? Okay?
The concession comes back to ECG after 25 years.
That's why.
Because we have a romanticization with our own, we own it.
Precisely. But my whole point is, and I cited in that speech, what I was a teenager in the mid-80s in the UK when British Gas was privatized. And I own shares in British Gas. And how I got to own shares, it was because it was offered to, you home, and then the application forms just drop through your mail at home. And then you fill it and then whatever you want. So my whole point was that...
So what, you pay money for the shares then?
Absolutely,
okay.
absolutely, absolutely. And I was a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
So my thing was that if I had, because of course this government inherited a process, and at least it had a sense to see that if you look at it, whoever the investors were just supposed to invest something north of $500 million over a 5-year period, okay? And with their own track record and the balance sheet of the entity that they were going to have, it is easy to do so. And I think it was based on that the president said, no, I'm not going to allow foreigners to take 80% of this for next to nothing. If I have to save the compact and work with the compact, let me turn it around and make sure the majority, at least 51%.
Also, this 51% was an MPP creation.
Absolutely.
You didn't inherit that from the MIDA?
It was 80-20.
80 to who?
80 to foreigners, a foreign entity.
A foreign entity?
Yes, and 20%.
Not the Americans?
No, the Americans, no.
You mean the structure of the agreement?
The structure
was that 80% of the concession goes to a foreign company?
Go to a foreign company and 20% to a Ghanaian company. But the point is that even the foreign company doesn't have to invest $500 million immediately. It's over 5 years.
So now,
over 5 years, they had to invest 80% of 500 million or whatever it is that they were supposed to do within the first 5 years. But you and I know, ECG, every month, about 200 million Ghana cedis income. Of course, much of it has to go into paying the IPPs for the power that they supply to them. But it's liquid. It's just that...
But that's very easy. I can do that.
Precisely.
Anyone can do
Precisely, but we're going to give it away to the foreigners.
But why did we sign the structure of that agreement?
Go and ask President John Mahama, not me.
Okay, so when you change it to 51%,
yes,
51% Ghanaian hold,
yes,
why did you give to a few Ghanaians, people who are said to be your friends?
Well, first of all, I think the key thing, first of all, when you say, why did you, I'm not part of government.
Well, I mean, why did the government give to a few Ghanaians?
I think what you have to realize is that government essentially had very little to do with the structure. Because what it is that by the time the MPP took over, there were 6 companies that were shortlisted.
Already, for the process?
Precisely.
Who were looking for 80%? Who were told they would get 80%?
Precisely. And they should come in with their Ghanaian partners.
20% Ghanaian
Yes, so precisely.
Yeah.
And this was not changed. No new entity, as it were, was added to it.
Okay, but MPP supervised the tender.
And then what happened was that I think 2 things happened. One, the president decided that if we're going to go with this compact, at least I want majority to stay in Ghana. We've lost the Turcos. Are we going to also lose this tragic asset? You know, but so that actually put, I think, some of them off.
Some of those who had been
the
final in the
precisely.
The tender. Okay.
And then the second thing was that in the national interest, government reduced tariffs. You know, so as soon as you reduce the tariff, also the attractiveness of it
goes down. Yeah.
Yes, and indeed, I think if you read the media statement well, it was based on, it was for this reason that they even changed from bank guarantee to insurance guarantee. Because
the so-called condition precedent that was changed to condition subsequent.
No, it was still condition precedent.
Okay.
But it was changed from a bank guarantee to insurance guarantee, because bank guarantee, they would want to see that the tariff shows that it will make money, or you will make money before a bank will put his money behind it. But government took a political national interest decision to reduce tariffs, 30%, the rest of it. But by doing so, it affected the economics of ECG.
And therefore the structure of the agreement for the concessionaire.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it was around that time that the 3 that were left standing, one, which I think everybody was quite clear was perhaps and these are companies that have been, they've passed. They're
part of the process.
They've been marked as having satisfied all the conditions that were supposed to. Okay? So it was EDF, BXC, and Morocco. EDF decided to pull out. It didn't get the assurance from the PARC that it needed. It pulled out, and it was left to
Morocco and BXC.
And BXC.
BXC went to court and lost. They felt that they had been shortchanged.
Also, for whatever reason,
they were accused of something.
They said that they didn't disclose that they had a concession, an existing concession with ECG. So essentially, PDS was left standing. It's not as if even PDS was handed over. Someone went through it, assessed them, and decided to give to PDS. It has been shortlisted by the previous government. It gone through, done all the markings, but then the rest decided to leave because the tariffs were not attractive, and perhaps the fact that it was Ghanaian majority, it was not good for them. But I think that when I hear all that is said, what I think is missing is that people have not really appreciated the decision taken by this president for 2 things.
Over the PDS matter?
Yes. No, over the whole concession matter.
Yeah.
First of all, he didn't want 80% of this for 25 years to go to foreigners for something that had not been run properly, we all admit, because over 2 billion debts was out there. And a big chunk of it owned by state institutions as well. But they were not collecting. Okay? And if the publications that we are seeing is anything to go by, at least you can see that the private managers are doing a better job than the state in going after those who owe them. So there was one thing. So he knew he could make money. So giving it out to foreigners for 80%, he was against. The second thing was that even when the concession had been granted, okay? But the good thing is that once there was some conditions that had been made conditions subsequent, it wasn't until September ended, per the arrangement, that PDS or the concessionaire was going to take the whole thing. Because there were still conditions to meet. So investigations were still ongoing. And we need to commend Kelly Gajapo,
Chairman of ECG.
Precisely. Who took it upon himself to go further than the work that had been done.
To find out about this insurance
he himself was an insurance man. And he felt that he wanted to be sure that if really this is the company that's doing the reinsurance, let me see whether he has the capacity in case we have to call on this 350 million. So he went the extra mile with ECG.
Did he do that because he didn't trust the people at PDS?
I have had a conversation with him, and he said, as an insurance man, he hadn't heard of our code.
Yeah.
that's a personal conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But if it's a big company, you'll hear of it.
Precisely. So he wanted to be sure that they had the capacity. So it wasn't as if he expected what
he wasn't witch hunting.
No, but he wanted to be sure if we give it, and he had until September. So it's not like it's too late, even though the insurance guarantee was a condition precedent. PDS was not taking full control until all the conditions subsequent were met at the end of September. You know, so ECG felt that it still had the opportunity to make sure that everything was.
But this is one of those that your opponents have called family and friends business, because they wonder what your own role,
is the most,
what your role, Gabby, is in PDS, and what's the role of Ken Ofori-Atta in PDS?
Is the most. First of all, my role in PDS is that my neighbor is the chairman of PDS.
You mean your next door neighbor?
Yes, I'm just saying.
You are referring to Philip Ayensu?
Yes. If I have a role in it.
That's all.
And but that's the links they make.
Yes, but you don't have any interest.
What interest do I have?
You didn't put it together. You didn't put a team together.
What interest? How do I put a team together? The PDS was there before. I mean, the concession and Morocco, they had been shortlisted before this government came into office. So how do I put it together? How do I put it together? Because my neighbor is part of a project?
Well, your neighbor and friend.
And friend. Yes, he's a good friend of mine. And I would be lying if I say that Philip had never had a conversation with me about PDS when he was doing it. He's my neighbor and he's a friend. But how do I own it? And the impression is created, and sometimes I feel sorry for him, okay? The impression is created as if he's a nobody. I mean, Philip
I know him.
Sold GH1 to
the Dufors.
The Dufors.
Yeah.
Philip is a shareholder in Charterhouse. Philip actually invested, I think, about altogether, from what he tells me, I mean, I don't know, 7 million. And this was before even this government came into office.
7 million in what?
Into Ideal Savings and Loans.
It's gone down.
Yes. No, so he's not as if, and you know, I admire people like Philip. Philip's story to me is similar to Lysikens. It's similar to even the big billionaire who is now Akka, the Akka's owner. He was selling on the streets. Okay, that's how he started. Lysikens, he said he didn't have money to go to school. Okay?
Those are great stories.
You know, so these are great stories. And started Joy FM, I'm talking about Philip. And he's become one of the biggest marketing gurus in Ghana. And he's built a brand. I mean, he has one of the best grooming places. They call him the barber. I mean, it's quite hard to reduce people to that effect, you know. But he's my friend. He's my neighbor.
And he was chairman of PDS.
And chairman of PDS. But when the government, that they say, my cousin is the president, my cousin is the finance minister, and my good friend is the chairman of ECG, when they felt that there was something wrong, they didn't look at Philip and say, Philip is Gabby's neighbor. So we will somehow deal with it. They took the decision that they felt they had to take to protect the national asset. And people don't see this.
Did you plead for
And I can
Did you
tell
plead for PDS? Did you say, let's give it some time? This is something we can do?
Sometimes I sit in a very, very sensitive position, and I use it intelligently, and I know where my allegiances are, okay? So what I tend to do, and it's part of my practice, I always try to find how you can, and I would not interfere in the government process. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would not interfere. If I would interfere, then I would say what? Oh, please find a way to
But we could have found a way. I mean, all the publication about the insurance guarantee and
the thing
all
is,
the sensation was not
you
necessary.
should look at the fact that the president, his finance minister, his energy minister, okay, the chairman of ECG, who started this whole process of looking further, doing further due diligence, all of them decided that the national interest, protecting a national asset, was paramount. It was paramount to somebody being Gabby's neighbor.
So what's going to happen to PDS? Are you going to take the concessionaires out, terminate, it's suspended now?
Well, I can't speak for government, but I think first of all, even the approach that the government has taken, some have even described it as heavy-handed, okay? And my understanding is that there's actually, even the Americans themselves, okay, who of course, the Millennium Challenge account, through the Millennium Challenge account, are offering the 5 million, not for 5 million to support this project, even think that government has been too harsh. But the thing is, when you have such a critical asset, okay, I mean, everything depends on electricity, health, water, business, running a household, whatever it is, even winning or losing election, as we saw in 2016, depends on electricity. So when you then detect what appears to be fraud, and I'm convinced there was fraud. There's absolutely
perpetrated by your friends.
I think.
By whom?
I think I am convinced there was fraud, but I'm not convinced that it was necessarily done by PDS.
Okay.
Okay. What I'm convinced is that there's fraud somewhere between Joe Australia. At least Joe Australia is in the center of this fraud, and I hope that they get to the bottom of it. Okay, because clearly monies that were supposed to go to our Kud, which left, per the records, Car Bank, and went through Dunwell somehow. So we don't have, as we sit, we don't have any insurance covering this very important asset. And I hope that they will resolve it pretty soon. So I am confident that the right thing will be done. And I think government's sole interest, and thank God for that, is how whatever happens will be in the national interest, is to protect this national asset and to make sure that it does what the compact was meant to achieve, which is that we have an ECG that is run properly, that is also what making money, because you can't lose when every minute you turn your light on. There's money.
Supposed to make money.
Absolutely. So
okay.
I'm pretty confident about that.
That this will end well?
Yes, but I think that they've been so unfair, even to Seconds, who is not a shareholder but a director. I mean, but these are strong people. I mean, the Ghanaian who owns, the most well-run hotels in the country. So I think we should be, and sometimes I think that I wish we had a situation, we had a strategy in this country where we are deliberately identifying winners in every constituency and creating millionaires in every constituency. I wish we had that attitude as a country, rather than bastardizing those who have made money out of hard work and are still doing so. Because if you find, and I'm saying that you identify winners, so it's not as if because I like Paul, I make you a millionaire. But I see what you're doing, okay? You've achieved something in this constituency, and I say, how do I empower you so that you can become bigger and create more jobs? And that's how you don't throw money at poverty, but you find winners, and then support them, and I think that is what the stimulus package was for. Because when this government came into office, a lot of viable commercial enterprises have suffered because of them so and related matters to do with macroeconomic instability and the rest of it. They had 104 companies. They were supposed to support them with about 1 point something billion. So far, 1.2 billion or thereabout. They've been able to support, I believe, just 20 with about 290 million Ghana cedis. And is left with about 900 million or so to support, I think, some 80 more. But of course, the money had to go into the banking sector. The money had to pay for energy. You had a situation, I remember in his 2015 State of the Nation address, President Mahama said that we've had Dumso in 81, 83, in 2006, but this time, after 3.5 years of Dumso, he doesn't want to manage it. He wants to fix it. You remember?
Yes, he said that.
And how did he go about? And then he said that he will even sack the minister if he doesn't.
Yeah, and the minister did resign a year later.
It means they didn't fix it. And how did he go about fixing it? He fixed it by creating another problem.
Which is?
They were signing PPAs as if they were confettis. I mean, how do you solve? First of all, the problem with Dumso was money, because we didn't have money to pay for fuel. It wasn't because of capacity. But in 2015, he had told us that he had 3,800 megawatts coming on stream. Whilst at the time, your peak capacity was about 2,100, 2,200.
The demand, the peak demand.
Demand, of course, your peak demand was about 2,100. And then you're supposed to have between 15 and 20% excess capacity. But you go and sign contracts about 3 times what you need. And these are take or pay. So in solving the problem, they became like merchants of war. They benefited from Dumso.
Financially?
Whoever did this arrangement benefited.
You are alleging corruption.
I'm not saying that. Merchants of war benefit from war, don't they?
They do.
But I mean, what will motivate a government that is solving a national crisis like Dumso to go and sign 3 times the capacity of what is required?
So you're saying
that today, if we're not careful, when the reviews that were there ongoing, if those reviews didn't happen, by 2028 or so, we would have paid in excess of about $7 billion for
energy we don't need. And we cannot export?
How do you export at 12 cents per kilowatt? Who will buy it? You go and sign contract at 12 cents per, who will buy it? Your neighbors won't, and you're not even adding transportation.
President Mahama and his team's decision to add capacity as a response to the Dumso was ill thought about.
Absolutely.
But the problem was to generate money to pay.
It was irresponsible.
Irresponsible.
It was irresponsible because the decision, when you were signing for 3,800 megawatts capacity at the time, which you told us that they are coming on stream by 2020, you were also signing 1,000 megawatts capacity in terms of emergency.
Can't you credit him for being futuristic, that the demand capacity was going to rise? We are inviting investors to come into this country. We're going to have plants.
But it's how
we have the Volkswagen coming in now. We want Nissan to come in. We want to electrify everywhere. We want to create irrigation, all of that. So he was thinking about the future and being a visionary leader.
Yeah, but when you are thinking about the future, think about how you will pay for the future. Do you understand what I'm saying? You don't create a situation where you end up spending about $500 million a year on excess capacity that you don't need. I mean, what sort of future thinking is this? And what informed such a decision? I'm not even too sure what informed the decision to split, because they did that at the same time, to split power from petroleum. So you had a situation where the power ministry was doing its own thing in its own silo, and then you had the petroleum ministry doing its own thing. So in one area, Tema, you had the power ministry signing an LNG, and then you had the petroleum ministry, GMPC, signing another LNG. And then you had another LNG being signed in Takoradi, where you have take or pay with E&I. So when you think of these things, then you ask yourself, what really informed the decision? You know, it beats my mind.
One of the seemingly negatives of this government, given its background, a political party created according to the philosophy of Pa Grant and Dankwa and others, property owning democracy, which believes that local people are as competent as foreigners. That then comes through the Buzia regime and comes under Kufuor, who declares a golden age of business, comes into power, and 7 indigenous banks are gone down, taking off the scene. First of all, no prosecutions have occurred. The people have lost their jobs. And the concern really is, if Bank X was paying these 1,000 people every day, how does government take over and says, I cannot pay them? So many people have lost their jobs at the different tiers. Couldn't it have been done another way to pluck out the culprits and keep the people working, keep the enterprise working, keep the brand working, especially as is finance? This is being thought about both by MPP opponents and some analysts as a very sorry point within the Akufo-Addo administration. Indigenous businesses have been lost.
Let me just attempt to answer this with a quote from the Bank of Ghana, press release 4 weeks ago. Just part of it, it says, we have no evidence on record to show that the previous management took steps to mitigate the risk of ultimate failure of these institutions, as it was required to do under the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, Act 930, which came into effect as far back as September 2016. In the face of the asset quality review, now you listen to it, UT Bank and Capital Bank were among the banks that were found to be insolvent after the May 2015 and June 2016 asset quality review. Okay? The 2 banks had ample opportunity of the AQR to raise the needed capital to restore capital adequacy to the regulatory minimum, but failed to do that. He goes on to say, while under Ghana's ECF program with the IMF, which started in 2015, the IMF provided recommendations on how the banks determined to be distressed under the AQR were to be handled to avert a financial crisis. The then management of the Bank of Ghana failed to implement these actions that would have halted the eventual collapse of a multitude of financial institutions. Now, my point is that...
But they've only mentioned 2 of the 7.
No, they
UT and Capital.
Yes, but even if you go and read the former President's State of the Nation address in 2016, he accused the Bank of Ghana then, okay?
This is John Mohammed's 2016 State of the Nation.
Of lapses in their supervisory role as the regulator of the banking sector, of the financial sector. Okay, so I think this government has not collapsed any banks.
But they have.
No, they have not collapsed these banks.
Where's UT?
The banks,
where's Unibank?
The banks were collapsed by a combination of factors. Go and ask the depositors of these banks that before they went down, were their checks been on it?
Were their checks not being on it?
Were their checks been on it?
I don't know.
Go and ask the depositors.
We didn't hear that.
Were their checks been on it? When they go to the ATM, were they able to take money out all the time? You know, so when you look at the problems that were there, then you ask yourself, and all these things were identified as way back as 2015.
Yeah.
Okay? But the solution then was pump them with more money.
Yes.
Okay? Pump them with more money. And where is that money coming from?
The taxpayer.
The taxpayers' money.
Yes.
And then you are pumping them with more money, as we saw with UT, as we saw with Unibank, as we saw with all these banks. And eventually they still they didn't have the liquidity.
Even after you gave them more money.
Precisely. You know, so.
But they were paying the 1,000 people that Ken Ofori-Atta and the Bank of Ghana have put out. UT was paying them.
UT was paying them.
They're paying their staff. Capital was paying their staff. Now government takes over and they have to go home.
No, I think we must be fair to what the facts were. These banks were insolvent. And they were insolvent.
I think that's understandable.
Yeah, the banks
but in their
were
insolvent situation, they were paying the people.
There were staff who were not being paid. I don't want to actually pick these banks, but the facts are clear. I don't think any of the banks will say that they were in a position to stand on their own 2 feet. I don't think any of the banks will say that.
Kofi Amoabe has said that about UT. that he was expecting. It's put up a video.
Have you looked at how that bank was being run?
No, I've not. I don't have the expertise in that area.
I'm just saying.
But I listen to him.
They understand that they made mistakes. For instance, I can give you just one instance where there were about 5 related companies for one client. And that client used 3 assets to secure 3 assets. The value of those 3 assets were nowhere near any of the loans that they were applying for 5 related companies.
Same 3 assets.
And use the same 3 assets, okay, to use it as collateral for 5 related entities. And even that asset, or those assets, were not even a quarter the value of the loan.
Are you talking about UT Bank?
UT Bank, yeah, because you mentioned UT Bank.
I see.
Okay, and it's not like the client, and I don't want to mention this, but it's not as if the client took those assets to different banks. We are talking about the same bank.
So the supervision of the bank's credit committee failed.
Precisely, but you see, the banks.
But there has to be prosecution in there. Shouldn't there be?
Well, I expect prosecutions to
taking very long.
I expect.
But is that why you closed down the bank? You can take out the people,
no,
the culprits.
The banks closed themselves down. The banks closed themselves down. And I think what government or the Bank of Ghana has done, of course, because they needed government to now come in and issue bonds to support the depositors. And for just the banks and the microfinance, you're talking about what? Close to about 3 million depositors. Now, you have a situation, I think the question that one has to ask is, if you had 12 billion cedis as a president, okay, would you use it to rescue banks that they needed, or use it to implement your manifesto promises? That's the question you should.
But rescuing the banks connects to a lot of people.
Yeah.
As you say, 3 million people.
But because it was necessary.
Yes.
Because the 12 billion or eventually
so 12 billion has been used.
11.2 billion was used to secure deposit of the banks. We don't even get into
Then DC had the press conference where they are challenging that. Did you hear that? Adongo says there's no evidence that an account was debited and an account was credited, that he's calling on the Ministry of Finance to show that, because he doubts it. Adongo is a member of parliament for the
Adongo should doubt his own figures, but that's a different matter. I'm not here to debate Adongo. I've seen a lot of his arguments, and I think...
But are there figures to back
God
these?
Bless him.
There's 11 billion stuff.
Oh, of course there are figures to back these.
And there's a credit and a debit.
There are figures to back these. And I think what you have to realize is that, and the figures are even in your budget deficit.
Okay.
You know, so my whole point is that you have a situation where these banks would have collapsed because what the Bank of Ghana had done was not sustainable. You couldn't just continue pumping money. It's like can you use a basket to go and fetch water? And that's exactly what was happening. You know, so, and I think we'd want our central bank to use our resources for things that are better, or things that are, you know, productive. And I think really, if you look at it, let's not even see the banks as collapsing, because all these banks would have collapsed. But now all these banks have been consolidated in banks that are indigenous, like CBG, which is now, I think, the 3rd largest bank in Ghana. GCB is stronger. And all these 2 banks are actually what? They're registering profit. At the same time...
CBG is registering profit?
Absolutely. Profit, I think first half of this year was about
they published something like
457%.
There's another small matter.
You know, so really, I think, and you know, we saw it in the US, we saw it in Europe. Eventually, even the money that's been spent, whether it's 14 billion, 11.2 billion, 12 billion, or whatever, it is not lost. Apart from the fact that it secures the depositors and it secures 10,000 jobs. Okay, some have been lost.
Yeah, but some have been lost. Yeah, jobs have been lost.
But 10,000, you would have lost all the 10,000 if you.
We don't know that for sure, do we?
You know that for
because
sure
you said the banks would have collapsed
because
anyway.
they were not in a position to do so.
Some of them doubt that. Moabi, for instance, doubts
But they were
that.
given opportunity.